Right before we jump into this video, would you like to take better pictures in only 11 days? Well, I created a free mini video course that you can sign up for right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/11 days. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a real-world review of Nikon's new version 3 firmware for the Z6 and Z7. So this is going to be a super long video because I wanted to go into as much detail as possible in multiple shooting situations to show you how the new version 3 firmware works and how the autofocus system is in the Nikon Z6 today. So for the majority of this shoot, I used the Nikon Z6 with an Atomos recorder on top to record my electronic viewfinder, so you can see all the focusing modes that I'm on. You can see the focusing box moving, you can see my settings, you can see when I take the pictures, because that is super important that you see exactly what I see as I'm taking the pictures. I shot all weekend in multiple situations and scenarios, starting with shooting my niece and nephew playing around in the backyard, on their jungle gym, on their slide, in the basement in a lower light situation. Then I went to Temple University to photograph the women's basketball team playing a game. And then finally, I tested out the animal IAF on my kitty cat, and Steven used the Z7 to test it out on his dog named Chip. Now, as I said, this is going to be a long video because we're going to break down each section for you, going through the different modes I was in, using different lenses, whether it's adapted or not adapted. So you're going to see a bunch of the good images as well as the not so good images. But I'm going to go ahead and upload full res images as JPEGs for you to look at. So you can see what happened on the screen in the viewfinder and then go check out the images that I may not show, but I want to make sure that you have all of the images to look at so you can see exactly what is going on. Because it's one thing to see a box on the screen on a face and see it moving around and look like it's actually in focus, but it's another thing to see the images to see if it actually was in focus. So I'm going to do something a little different than I normally do. We're going to start with the best images from all of the shoots. I want to show you that first and then get into breaking down each section. So here are what I think are the best of the best images with honors, sir. Look at this. Look at this little kid. That is my nephew. Boom. Then we got running shots. Now keep in mind, you're gonna see all of this in action in each section, but I think it's important to show you the best of the best right now so you can understand that the Z6 is more than capable of getting fantastic results. If you have an understanding of your composition and how to use the different settings that these cameras offer you, you can get great results. And that's all that matters, because at the end of the day, the keeper shots are what matters. Did you get the shots that you needed to get? And this is one of my favorites, and you're gonna see that happen a little later on. Oh, I can't wait to show you 68 pictures in a row that we did with this to watch him rocking that whole thing, switching over to a 24mm lens to shoot with 1.8. Basketball, a scene where a lot of people think isn't really possible with a Z6, but it is. Another basketball going up, whether I'm in dynamic area AF or lock-on tracking, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if you get the shots. She got blocked right there. That wasn't exactly good. Look how super tack sharp this one is, right on the eye. You'll see how that was done during the basketball game. And finally, wrapping up with Kitty McKitterson. The kitty's name is Sammy Davis Jr Kitty right here. He only has one eye, so the IAF has a 50-50 shot of getting it right. Actually, better than 50-50 because he only has one eye. There's no other eye there, so it should get it. Beautiful shot of Kitty, and then beautiful shot of Kitty once again. Now, there's one thing that I keep hammering home with all of today's cameras and the new technology that you find in them. Do they allow me to get shots that I otherwise would have missed if I was shooting the old school way with a DSLR? Which isn't saying that that's a bad thing, but with the technology that's in the cameras today, do they allow me to get shots that I would have otherwise missed if I didn't have those technologies? And that is what I tested out with the Z6 in all of the scenarios. Did it allow me to get things that I wouldn't have gotten in version basically 1.0 or 2.0 in the software. Now let's read about the firmware so we can get an understanding what Nikon says they did. Their press release says that version 3.0 update adds animal detect AF, which it did, plus enhanced subject tracking functionality for Z6 and Z7. Now, I don't understand exactly what they mean by the term functionality, enhanced subject tracking functionality. So we reached out to Nikon PR and they sent back more information, which is this. Here is some additional information. In addition to the multiple elements improved in the firmware overview, CF Express, Animal AF, etc., functionality of subject tracking AF has been improved. Functionality of subject tracking AF has been improved. Does that mean the functionality of simply turning on subject tracking has been improved? Because that certainly has been improved, how easy it is to turn that on and lock on a subject where it wasn't as easy before, but it doesn't say anything about face detect and IAF as it pertains to just the regular autofocus modes. So we don't know if they actually tweaked anything in there to make it any better or not, but that doesn't matter because I tested out this camera with version 3.0 firmware, and now we're gonna get into the results. Now let's jump into the first shoot where I went ahead and tested my nephew coming down the slide. So let's run through this before I show you the images. Full speed, boom, boom, boom. Now, remember, the box looks like it's on his face. Here it is. I mean, it's on his face, it's on his eye, it's finding it perfect with the 70-200. I love that because that makes my shooting so much easier because I can focus on my composition more than anything. And in all honesty, that is allowing me to get shots that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to get in many other situations back in the day. But let's watch this once again to see what happens with the box. Let's go through frame by frame and then we'll show you the pictures. So here he goes, he starts coming down the slide, I take a picture. You'll see the blackout when I take pictures. There's another one. So the box isn't exactly perfect on his face. It looks like it's good, but is everything in focus or not? So I took about 5 or 6 pictures right there. Let's jump into Lightroom so we can look at those pictures. Here's the first one. Now, let me just say this. I am using the 70-200 2.8, the latest Nikon version of the 70-200 2.8 with the F to Z adapter. Now, I know a lot of people out there have been saying, but you didn't use a native lens. Well, there is no native lens right now. The 70-200 2.8 AFS, or whatever the heck they call it, is currently delayed. It's not out at the time of making this video, so that is the only option we have, is to use the F to Z adapter, which, by the way, works seamlessly with all of the lenses and works perfectly fine, and you're gonna see the results throughout this shoot showing you that even shooting basketball, it doesn't matter if you adapt a lens to it, it's going to be perfectly fine. And also, coming up, I will use the native S-glass lenses for the Z-mount system. So here we go. Jumping into the photo, this one is sharp. Are we going in? Let me see. I want to make sure that I'm going in 1:1. 1:1, it's nice and sharp on him. Next photo. He starts to do his slide. This one looks like it back focused slightly. It's more on the hands because you can see right here on the side of the wood, you can read that perfect. The face is ever so slightly out. On Instagram, this would look perfectly fine for most people, but then he starts coming down the slide. Also, I'm able to focus on him at the top, which is not something you could do with a DSLR, so that's great. This one is pretty darn close. Remember, you can download full res images. They're gonna be up on the Flickr so you can see full res and download them. Next shot, he starts coming down further down the slide. This one looks like it's focused more behind him on his jacket right there, not so much the face. It's pretty close, but it's not on. And this one is definitely out of focus. And then the last one is him just getting down to the bottom. Now, you'll notice some images are edited. Not all images are edited. Sometimes I don't edit the images that aren't the keepers, but you can see that he lands at the bottom and you noticed IAF lock on right to his eye. which was perfect. This is so sharp, it looks great, nice tones, nice colors. I shot at 1/1250th of a second to keep it fast so that when he's coming down the slide, it gives me the best chance of getting everything nice and sharp. But right off the bat, I am really happy with the results that I got of him mostly at the bottom of the slide. It did a pretty good job in the continuous focusing, tracking him as he came down the slide, but if you didn't see the images to see the ones that missed and all you saw was the box move, you might have thought that, oh, it's amazing, this focus is incredible because look at the box going on the screen, it's right on him. The only way you can determine if it works or not is to actually look at the images in the computer to see if they're in focus or they're not. Let me cut in here real quick and remind you that I am still doing a super huge mega camera giveaway where one of you will get the chance to win a camera valued up to $3,499 or lenses valued up to the same amount. To get entered for free, head on over to bit.ly/megafro2020. You can also score extra points if you purchase or already own FroPack 1 or FroPack 2. But remember, there is no purchase necessary, so you don't have to buy any of those in order to win the grand prize. Let's go back to the backyard where my nephew decided to run. And by decided to run, I'm like, hey, go over to that pot and run towards me 7 times. So here we go, 70-200, 2.8. Look, 1/4000th of a second at 2.8, 100 ISO. That is fast enough to freeze any motion that you would ever see, even a rocket ship, most likely. So here he is. Now, you can see it didn't acquire him right away, but as he starts to get closer, we'll just play it all the way through, it's doing a pretty good job of tracking him. It stays on him, and it barely finds the eye at the end, but it did. All I care about in this situation is it locking onto the face, because it doesn't really need to find the eye as much when you're shooting at 2.8 and they're at a distance. It's basically all going to be in focus anyway. It's just how is it tracking? We're going to run through a couple of these and then get to the images in Lightroom. Here he's tracking, then I'm pulling back on the zoom to keep him in the frame. Shot, 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 shot. I am shooting in continuous high, not high plus. I did shoot during the basketball game in high plus, and you're going to see how that worked out when we get to that section in the basketball game. If you go down below in the description, we'll have different sections that you can jump to, different timestamps so that you can see this section, that section, go to whatever section that you want to go to. But in this situation, I don't mind the blackout. If anybody has trouble with this blackout, this is how we've been shooting for years. You have blackout, so what? But you can still continually see what you are shooting, whereas with high plus, you don't see everything that you're shooting, which we'll show you later. Went horizontal, he decided to jump on the ground. You see it lost it, but it reacquired him pretty fast. He did it again, and it reacquired him pretty fast once again. Now, let's jump into these images. So here we go. This was the first shot from a distance. He's sharp. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, but it's about how does it track. That one's definitely sharp. This one is sharp as well. That one, is it questionable or not? When you're 1-to-1, maybe slightly, but I think it's fine. But then this one, he's clearly out of focus as he jived to the left. This one, as he started to come back to the right, was out. But then it reacquired him and nailed the focus. And the next one kind of looks like it missed because it's focusing on the back of his jacket more so than his face. Let's keep going because you saw a bunch of different clips. This one I shot a lot more and zoomed back out as he was zooming. So I went from 200 all the way to 70. Looks good. That one's not in focus. That one's not in focus. That one is definitely in focus. I don't even know if I need to zoom in on it, but yeah, it's definitely in focus. And he's in the shade just a little bit, but it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when we were shooting these and they were outside playing. That's sharp. That's sharp as well. Then he starts making these faces like, I'm gonna get you. And that's perfectly sharp. So it's doing a pretty good job until it got to about 70 millimeters and he was closer, and we start to get to the closer focusing side of it. It didn't focus any further right at that point. One more time. This is the third run that he did. It did a good job pretty much through there. And then for the third go around with the horizontal shots, this looks great. It acquired him. The colors look good. He dove. It kept him in the frame. As you saw, he pops back up. We keep getting shots. like the colors and the tones that I got out of this raw file. You can download the full res, as I've said a couple of times, and there you go. I think it did a pretty good job of capturing him while he was running. Now, he's not the fastest kid, he's only 5 years old, and one of the hardest things for cameras to do is track a subject as they get closer to you. But I'm interested to see what Nikon does when they come out with the 70-200 2.8 that is designed, that is a Z-mount lens. Will it focus quicker? Will it allow me to keep things more in focus as they're tracking? I think it did okay. It wasn't terrible, it did a good job, and it probably allowed me to capture shots that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to capture if I was just relying on, say, dynamic area AF back in the day. For the next scene, I switched over to the 24-70 2.8 because Jace got on this hammock thing, and from the side, by the way, it wasn't gonna look good. So I'm like, oh, look at all these strings. This is a little teaching moment right now. I'm like, oh, look at all the strings holding him up. That's gonna look cool in the foreground out of focus. Then I came around to the front of it and I started to shoot down here. It didn't acquire right away, but there you go. There's the face detect as he shakes back and forth. And then I zoom in a little, starts to find the eye and it bounces back. Look, if it finds the face, perfectly fine. If it finds the eye, even better. You can see how fast he's shaking back and forth. This is doing a great job allowing me to definitely capture something that I wouldn't have been able to do before because I couldn't move the focusing points fast enough to go to the left, to go to the right as he was rocking back and forth. I'm gonna fast forward through a bunch of this because I took 68 photos of him rocking. Oh, who wants to watch him fall off? I do, Jared. Oh, he fell off. And basically, I got to him real quick. I'm like, okay, get back on. Don't cry. Get back on. So he got back on, and then I continued shooting, and it did a great job right here. But even though the box looks like it hit, did it actually hit? Let's go look at those 68 images. So they start right here. We scroll on through image after image after image. Some of these aren't edited. Keep that in mind. To this keeper image, this is probably one of my favorite shots from the entire shoot. Super tack sharp on the eye. Love the contrast, love the tones. Now's a good time for me to tell you this, that I've been a Nikon shooter since I was 15 until 39 when I started shooting Sony. We'll get into more of that by the end of this video. I absolutely love the files that come out of these Nikon cameras. And this update so far is doing a very good job for allowing me to get shots that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten in the old school way of shooting with the Nikons. But there's 68 photos that I took here, and of the 68, there were only two times, I marked it right here. Here's one that wasn't in focus, and then the last one was just completely out of focus, which is this one. But then by the next shot, it's back in focus. So the camera passes with flying colors, or the firmware passes with flying colors in this situation. He's not moving forward or back. He's rocking side to side. I'm using the 24-70 2.8, which is a Z-mount lens, which is now a good time to tell you that that is the only professional lens that Nikon has out for the Z-mount system. There's no other professional lens. You have the 50-1/8s, you have the 85-1/8s. I don't consider those the best of the best with honors. If Nikon would be quicker and come out with more, the 24-70, the 70-200, 1.4s, 1.2s, kind of like what Canon has, kind of like what Sigma and Sony has, as well as Tamron for the Sony E-mount, then I think the system would be even better. But it did really good in this situation. So let's jump back into it. So I'm gonna say this right now, to keep this from being like an hour-long video, we're gonna go through, hopefully a little quicker, the shoot part of it and not jump back into Lightroom unless I really need to jump back into it. But as I keep saying, you can download the full res images so you can see whether it hit or it didn't hit. So let's just keep going right here. This is a tough situation with the 24-70 2.8, having it track him. It didn't really focus too well because he's moving super fast, and I'm honestly not sure that the Sonys would even keep up with this, but in this situation, none of these were actually in focus. It's finding his face, but it's not in focus. And there, let me go back a couple of steps, a couple of frames, you saw that it floated away to the top left-hand corner for some reason. It's like, it tried to track him with face tracking, and then it just went over there, and I don't know why. But it reacquires. which is a big bonus compared to what it used to do. It used to lose it, and then you couldn't find him anymore. But now he starts going side by side. That picture was in focus. That picture's in focus. That's definitely there. And so this is where it's tough, where he goes back and forth just like that. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that the images that you're seeing on the screen right now were taken with the Nikon Z6 and the new firmware and edited using FroPack 2. If you're looking to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, we created 15 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack2. Over on the page, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, you can save 40% off for a limited amount of time. Or if you'd like to pick up FroPack 1 and FroPack 2 as the FroPack bundle, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Next, he's on the slide. That's not a slide, Jared. That would be called a swing. I learned my ABCs. It's really easy here. It finds his face, and you can see how still I can stay without having to actually go ahead and change my composition to when I move focusing points, or have to basically run out of focusing points on a DSLR, because this can just go higher in the frame. That should make your shooting much better. Your compositions should start to get better because you're relying on this new technology. I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out here is, can you rely on this new technology to make your shooting better, to capture things that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to capture in the past. Continuing on, 24-70 with both kids. The box jumps over to Jace on the right-hand side here, but it's not giving me that arrow, the arrow that I would be able to hit to jump over to Juliana's face if it would know that she's there. But because they're on the same plane, those photos are nice and sharp all the way across. And the 24-70 focus is super fast. You barely see it focusing like some of the other lenses, like the 85. So that worked out really well for this type of shot. Now we have Juliana at the top. It picks her up right away. I can zoom in and not have to worry about moving the camera too much. Let's go back and watch that again. It picked her up right off the bat with face detect. Zoom in a little more, you've got eye detect, and then she comes down the slide and I bailed out of the way. So it worked well. Then she starts running through the backyard, picks her up, boom, boom, boom. 1 picture, 2 pictures, 3 pictures. You saw how, I'm gonna actually show you this one. I'm gonna show you the one of her running across. So here we go, here's a couple of them. This one was her running across this shot, and then it jumped to this shot and this shot. Nice and sharp, really nice colors, really nice tone, but it did a good job finding her on that one. Now I switched over to the 24 1.8 to get a little wider, but you can see as she was coming up, it focuses right on her eye, allowing me to focus on composition alone. I got one of my favorite shots again of this. Look, right on the eye, right there. It happens quick. You can just shoot, shoot, shoot in the continuous auto mode. That's what you can see right here on the right-hand side. This is the full-on auto continuous where the camera is doing what it thinks it should do. It's finding the subject either using the red boxes, which blinky blink, to find something, and then when it locates your subject's face, it puts a bigger box, and then when it finds the eye, it puts the little box, and it really makes shooting a lot more enjoyable when that happens. Same thing, oh, let's move over here, it looks better, less sun, pop it off right there, boom, 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 good, move on to the next one. Hey look, shoot between something. Not the greatest photos in the world in terms of composition and stuff, but they are exactly what I was going for. I just wanted to see it. Look how fast it acquired her face, by the way. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Boom, acquired her face. One more time, boom, acquired her eye right where it needed to be, allowing you to get the shot that you otherwise would have missed. What do I mean by that? Because I know I keep saying it. What I mean is, it's not saying that you couldn't get great results with a DSLR or not having IAF or any of this technology. It's saying that if she was there for a split second and I had to move the focusing point to her eye, it would be super slow to do and I might have not even gotten a picture off. So what I'm saying is, because of IAF, I'm now able to get shots that I otherwise would not have been able to get because the technology is making us better photographers. I really do believe that. Next, we move into the basement, a lower light situation. There you can see the red boxes because it can't acquire their face or their eye from that distance, I guess, with the 24-70. So it's still in focus, but I don't trust it as much. It's just a psychological thing that if it showed the eye, then I'm more apt to think that it's going to be in focus versus just blinkies on the screen like this. But when I go ahead and zoom in, you can see from here, as I zoom in, it now finds his face, which makes me feel better because he's not really moving, so I know that it's most likely going to be in focus. Oh, I love this. I love this. Did you see how fast that was acquired? Watch this. Let's go back. Oh, look, there's a toy underneath the sofa. I hope they don't need that one. Look at this. I switched over to the 85 1.8, which actually, I come to think of it, I didn't switch. I actually didn't have the 24-70 on in that clip before it was the 85. Let's watch this again. Watch how fast it acquires her eye. Boom, 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 portrait, she's gone. Within a second or two, she's out of the frame, but here it is. Super tack sharp on the eye. That's what we're talking about. Capturing things that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to capture if we didn't have this technology. So it did a really good job right there. Here you can see him being like, Uncle Jared, where's my gift? It's probably something like what he was saying, but you can just watch how fast it acquires right there and know that it's going to hit. Now we come in from the side. They're hugging, they're hugging. She's playing it up for the camera. Did you see that, by the way? She's like, oh, are you taking my picture? I just want to make sure that you're taking my picture because I'm going to play around now. Yeah, she's a diva. She's playing it up. But they're wrestling right here. Brother and sister, they're twins if you couldn't tell. Shoot, 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 shoot. And then watch, we'll fast forward through this. You can just see that it keeps on one of them the whole time. Until we pop off to the side here. Finds his eye from the side. And you can see how still I get to stay. My composition gets to stay super still. And then that's when I hit the arrow button. Let's go back. You saw that arrow that showed up? This arrow means that if I hit the joystick to the right or the D-pad, it will jump over to the other face in the frame, which it did right there. It acquired and then lost when she went behind him. And then the rest is just them wrestling and fighting and fighting and wrestling and checking his eyeball. Continuing on in the basement here, we got him running around the sofa. And it's tracking, and just look at that. It's in a point where you wouldn't have had focusing points on a DSLR, but I don't even care anymore. Now's a good time to mention that I'm in continuous focus, basically 100% of the time, whether I'm shooting with a Sony, a Canon, or a Nikon at this point, because AFS single focus is basically dead. You don't have to lock in and compose. Yeah, all you have to do is just let it find the subject's eye. And we'll just let it play out. You just let it find the subject's eye, and you then can compose because it stays locked on his eye. That's the point that this makes me a better photographer, getting shots that I would have missed. And this is definitely a tough scene to round out the basement here, is will it find the eye? And it did find the eye. And so that's good that even playing jail or whatever he was doing here, he was able, the camera was able to get the focus. So here's something I wanted to try out. I wanted to see what would happen if I had animal IAF on and tried to photograph not animals. We're mammals, right? We're mammals, Stephen? Yeah. I think we're mammals. I wanted to see what would happen there because let me show you something. I have that setting on right now. We are shooting with animal AF. You can see IAF. You can see how much smaller the box is, and it's finding his eye, and it's in focus, but it doesn't seem to track as well as the regular tracking would do. Now, one of the reasons I'm showing you this is because there is nothing in the viewfinder that tells you have animal IAF activated. Now that's an issue because look up here. Nothing here shows you animal IAF at all. So it works, it still finds the face, but I don't think it focuses as fast or as accurate when you leave that on. So just be mindful of that if you photograph an animal and you have IAF on, that you turn it off when you're done when you go to photograph people. So that wraps up photographing the kids in the backyard and also in the lower light situation of the basement. Now let's move on to something that I think is a little more difficult and one of the more challenging things for the Z6, and that is basketball. We've got women's basketball at Temple University. They were playing Tulsa. They're called the Hurricanes. Why? I don't know. They're in Tulsa. I don't think they get hurricanes in Tulsa. So right off the rip, let's see the first shot. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, did anybody see that stutter? Yeah, that stutter is because I took off high and went to high plus. So high plus gives you 12 frames a second, by the way, which is very nice, but it also implements a stutter. You're not seeing blackout, but you're seeing a preview of the image that you took, and you're not getting a full view of what's actually happening, which makes sports and shooting other things a little more difficult because what you're seeing actually already happened and you just have to anticipate where it's going. Let's go back and show you that once again. Boom, 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 click, 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 70 to 200. I want to just jump in here to Lightroom to show you with the 70 to 200. Perfectly sharp, tracked it without a problem. The colors and tones are super nice. I'm happy with it. 4000 ISO, so that's pushing this camera a little far, but it's perfectly capable of handling 4000 ISO at 2.8 at 1/1600th of a second with the F to Z adapter on. It didn't have a problem at all. Next, I moved on to subject tracking, which, by the way, is the functionality that was updated. In the past, subject tracking, you had to activate and lock on the screen and move a box around and hit OK. They've made it much easier to activate, which is a welcomed update. It is easier to activate. It's a big box. Not sure if you can make it smaller. Yeah, we'll watch how it works. Watch it work here. I lock onto her and then it just fades away and it found her again. Those stutters are when I'm taking the pictures. So here we go again. First, it missed her when I pressed my finger halfway down and went to the background where the cheerleaders are. Sorry, they're the dance team. Then it acquired her. Let's go back a little bit. Look, it's on her. It's focused, and then it just drifted away. Drifted away. Up, and away it goes, and then locks over here, locks over there, finds her. You see the double click? When I say double click, it goes that's because H+ is on. So that's how it gives you a little bit of a stuttering feel to it. Personally, I think that this mode should really be in conjunction with face detect as well as IAF, because that is in essence lock-on tracking and subject tracking unto itself. This is pretty difficult to get a handle on, to lock onto a subject, to track the subject, because it kind of loses her and loses the subject not too well. Here, it tracked the subject all the way down, but did you see that? Watch that again. Just watch the stutter and where she ends up by the time I stop shooting. She's out of the frame and the other girl's coming in with the ball to pass it. They're in focus, but it also makes it difficult to know where the subject's going or to follow the action when you're in that mode. Would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? Well, if you said yes, just look for this orange box over on the website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you that guide for free. So let's try subject tracking again here on 15. Boom, 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 bunch of pictures all the way up the court. Then onto that girl. Let's go back, watch it again, and then we'll go check out these images. Locks on her, perfect. When she's not being distracted or there's a distraction in the frame, here we go. Locks on, it's perfect. Nice and sharp, perfectly keeps up with it with the 70 to 200 on the F to Z adapter, all the way through. And then this is really cool, that it didn't lose her right through here. It stayed on her, she's perfectly sharp with the subject tracking right there. It's not the best mode in the world. It's very awkward to use, and it's not so super sticky or easy to figure out where to put the box because it's just such a large box. Continuing on, same thing. But did you see that? Watch at the end again. Watch how far it jumps ahead. Oh, it jumps ahead. Because you lose it when you shoot in high plus. That's why I don't always recommend shooting in the high plus mode. But what I will say is that when you're taking pictures, I ended up taking more pictures than I saw in the herky-jerky delay, because I ended up getting more shots, like 12 shots, and I only saw the herky-jerky for 9. You're actually taking more pictures than you see the delay in the viewfinder with. It's crazy how it works. It works, but you saw how far the subject jumped out of the frame when you finish taking the pictures. That's one of the reasons I don't shoot in that mode, and something that I hope Nikon can get better in the future. So one thing right here, as you can notice, I went into dynamic area AF. This is like the old school way of shooting with the DSLR, where you would have a box in the middle and then boxes surrounding it. They used to be a lot smaller in the DSLR, but it's taking information from all of these areas to help track the subject. I moved into that mode because I was having trouble with the lock-on tracking option. That was not doing that good, so I thought I would try this out, and it worked. And it also missed the background from time to time. You can download those images and see where it hit and see where it missed. But it did acquire in certain places fairly quick. Just like this, acquired, got her, she was in focus, got the 2 shots quickly, and they look good. Tracking her up the floor, 2 quick shots, 3 quick shots, 4 quick shots. This is with the blackout. You saw how that happened. That's with a regular shutter. Boom, 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 a little bit of the blackout, but you can at least follow the subject as she's moving. But this is where you want to use the new technology to hopefully track the subject better and not rely just on dynamic area AF, which did okay. It wasn't the best, but the results are actually pretty good, so it can show you that I got some good shots with it. Same thing coming up the floor. Lost her there. Another thing coming up the floor right here, a couple of quick shots. Basketball is difficult because there's a lot of people crossing, and it's the same thing whether you're shooting a Nikon, a Canon, or a Sony. You're going to run into the same things with people crisscrossing. You just hope that the tracking stays locked on the subject that you want it to stay locked onto. With the next clip, I went on to the 24-70 2.8 because I wanted to use a native lens here. Shooting underneath the basket, you can see that the focusing points are just jumping around. It doesn't know what to lock onto. It doesn't find any faces, and so I switched into the lock on to see if I could lock onto a subject, which was very hard to do, because I have to physically move the box. It doesn't find the person and stay on them, and it just loses it until they go up the other way. Back under the basket with dynamic area AF. Underneath the basket, boom, the shot goes in, you take the pictures. But what's interesting about this one is this shot right here, she looks to be in focus, but the scoreboard looks to be perfectly in focus as well. And all these people in the background, I really think it back focused, but I honestly don't know that anybody would know any different unless they were pixel peeping like we're doing right now. But that was in dynamic area AF. It looks like it missed slightly on that one, but it still looked usable. Now we're locking on to the cheerleader as she runs off. Oops, it just faded away to the person in the back, and then it jumped to this guy right here. Now, that's good that it stayed locked on him, but what happens if I want to get it onto the girl that he's talking to? I'm trying to do that, but it's locked on him the whole time. To get back into the full auto, now it's found her face, and I'm like, oh wait, I want it to go onto him, but I'm not getting the triangle to move it. This is where the Sonys and now the Canons have a better option, because a focusing box is always active for you to go ahead and juice the system, as I say, to move it, to be like, hey, look over here, because I don't have the arrow. The arrow didn't show up to allow me to go to his face. There it showed up, but it didn't show up the whole time, and that was me trying to push it out of the way to get over to his face, to go from one to the other. Now we're on her. Really sharp images, by the way, on her too. Boom, boom, couple of pictures. I'm trying to get it to go to him, it's not going to him, and that's why I'm moving around so much, and it ended up losing him. So a recommendation to Nikon is to give us a way to move the focusing point to tell us which person we want it to use to look to, especially if it doesn't give us the option to hit that box. Couple of quick shots right here just showing you that it's finding her face. Those were in focus as she came down the court. Not the greatest shots in the world, but just showing you that it can track and find and follow and get the photos in focus. That was interesting. Let's watch that last part again. It wasn't sure what to focus on, so that's why it goes with it found the face, then it goes to the red boxes, and then the face jumped right to the referee. So that's one of those things where you may miss a shot you were trying to get because the system didn't do you any good on that one. Back into high plus to shoot 12 frames a second. We've got dynamic area AF on once again. I'm gonna let this play out so you can follow the subject. Boom, 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 boom. See how herky-jerky it is? See how stuttery it is as we shoot? It definitely makes it more difficult to know that your composition and your framing is spot on. But here we go with her coming down the floor. She's in focus. She goes up for the shot. Here she is right here. You've got the girl coming in to play defense. She's sharp. The ball's good. This is a winning shot in my book, so that's a win for the system. Just some action of her cutting through the hole. These photos look good as well. Oh God, she got blasted. By the way, it wasn't a foul because we'll go through this, so watch this. Boom. That's funny. It goes a couple of frames because I'm in high plus, so you can see it goes from this shot to this shot, and there's a lot of stuff going on in between, and it actually took 2 shots in between till she got mushed and blocked right there. It is also super difficult to shoot vertically with a Z6 and Z7. You know I've hammered home the fact that it doesn't have a grip. That is something that if they add in the future will make it so much easier to shoot professionally, to shoot professional sports, to shoot portraits. It will make life a hell of a lot easier. So next up, I go from dynamic area and I quickly switch off into auto because I want to see how it does at a distance. So I switch into there. It finds her face. Takes a couple of shots. Oh, and then it just drifts off to the right-hand side for some odd reason. I don't know why that decided to happen, but it did. So that's just one of those quirks that needs to get fixed in the system, which probably will get fixed at some point. But it probably has something to do with high plus, trying to read the focusing points while it's shooting, and who knows? It just goes ahead and drifts off to the side and misses. Back into dynamic focus, we've got Ashley Jones cutting to the hole. She cuts to the basket, and a lot of those photos ended up missing. They ended up back focusing, and you'll see that when you download the full res images that they ended up missing. Like, it tracked pretty well, and you can see the herky jerky, the boom boom boom, the high plus. And those should have been, there's no reason it should have found the background when I'm in dynamic area autofocus at that point. And then I wanted to try with the lock-on tracking again. You can just see, because that's what the firmware did, that it skips to this person. I get it back to Ashley right here, then it back to this person. And then when you try to acquire her again, it just doesn't find her at all as she is driving the lane. And just playing it out, you can see what's happening. It's hard to move it around. So every time I take my finger off, you'll see it turn white. When I activate the focus again, that's when it locks on. As I take pictures, when there's no distractions, it does a pretty good job. But here's the problem. I want it to go to the face and I want it to go to the eye. I don't want it to go to the arm. I don't want it to go to the chest or to the legs. That's not where I want my focusing box to go. So this is me trying to move the focusing box, which is super difficult when I'm shooting vertical because I have to do this with my thumb because there's no grip to make it easier. It's so hard to do that, which then ends up making me miss some of the photos. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own photo portfolio, use what I use for jaredpolin.com because it's super easy, you don't need to know coding, and it is affordable. To get a free 14-day trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. And if you decide to sign up after that, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Continuing on testing out the new functionality of the lock-on tracking, yeah, that failed pretty bad so far. I'm like, hey, can we just lock onto the ref? Nope. Let's drift away. Let's lose her. Finds her there, but then, all right, let's pick up the girl coming up from the back, the referee. It finds her, but I'm like, let's go to her face. It finds her face. It stays locked on pretty well right here until there's a distraction. It picked up again and then picked up that's good. But then it goes back to Ashley right here and you can see that it's bouncing around. We need different cases inside of the Nikon that allow you to tweak it better to be like, don't lose the subject. Stay on the subject in this situation, and then it will be better off. And to wrap up the basketball game, it's always good to photograph people on the bench because it's technically easier sometimes. But I wanted to see face detect here. I wanted to get the eye. I wanted it on that girl right there on the coach. It wouldn't find her, but it would find the girl next to her. So it found her eyes, but I couldn't get it to jump to that person. And so that was disappointing. But it found her, and that is so sharp. You can go look at that file. That is a super sharp image, really perfect, but you can see that it just keeps bouncing around. from subject to subject. It doesn't go to where you need it to go. It doesn't stay there. You can't move it around independently. I mean, at the end of the day, with the basketball game, I got very good results. Did I get better results than I would have gotten with old school style of shooting? In some situations, yes. It's not the easiest thing to photograph basketball. And I think the Z6 did a pretty good job, because at the end of the day, it's about the keeper images. And did I get things I would have otherwise have missed? And I think the answer to that is yes. I know this is a long video, I understand that, but I thought it was super important, or we as a team thought it was super important, to shoot as many situations and scenarios as possible with the Z6 and the new firmware, to give it a fair shake, to show you different situations and see how the results worked out. We're gonna jump into the Animal IAF now, which is something that Nikon didn't even say they were working on, and they released it, but how is it? Here we go. I've got the 85 1.8 on there. We've got the box finding Kitty's eye. Looks like it's in focus because the box is covering his eye. I took 10 pictures. Let's see how it did. Here are the 10 shots. Nose, eye, nose, 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 and then eye. 2 for 10. That is really bad. That's under the Mendoza line in baseball, or it's right at the Mendoza line. For those who don't know that, the guy never batted above 200 for his career, so they call it the Mendoza line. It did terrible in that situation. Now let's check out some other situations that we tested. Kitty's laying here. I'm using the 70 to 200, trying to find his eye. Well, that's his ear. He's laying there. That looks like, well, it looks like it's focusing on his eye that doesn't exist. His eye doesn't exist because he lost it in the war. But there, it looks like it's on his eye. It's having trouble when he's upside down. It's making it difficult to shoot because it feels like if I try to move it, there's no way for me to move the focusing point. So it's super difficult, especially when he's rolling around. I mean, he just spends a good amount of time just rolling around on the carpet, not making it easy in any situation to try and get a good photo of him using the IAF. So I don't blame the system for this one. I do wish it acquired much faster, but it's not. So it really wasn't good in this situation. I get it. It's kind of a backlit situation, but we did a front-lit situation where Kitty's eye was in bright sunlight, and it was basically nose AF, 2 for 10, not so good. So let's take a look at how it does here. You can see that it's finding his eye that doesn't exist because he lost it in the war. Sometimes it looks like it's finding his eye or his nose or his, there we're shooting. And in all honesty, checking these images, it was like 50% of the time it was hitting. Don't forget, you can download the full res images so you can take a look and see what hit and what didn't, but it's not perfect. I don't know that I expected it to be perfect, but I spent time going into single point, and then, oh, look at that, single point was much easier because Kitty was sitting still. I had time to move my focusing point, but it also ends up being difficult to try and move it if he rolls over. Because if he rolls over, it's hard to find his eye. But if he's just gonna sit there, then yeah, I'm gonna get a nice and sharp image just like this, where it's super duper sharp on the eyeball with the 70 to 200 and the F to Z adapter. Continue on with the IAF. Looks like it's hitting his eye, but you can just see how it's bouncing around. It does a lot of time bouncing around. Oh, and then Kitty rolls over. Oh, Kitty, psst, roll back over, Kitty. Can't get some good pictures of you here, but you can see it's not finding his eye at all. His eye is super bright, by the way, in contrast to he's a black cat with a white nose. But yeah, not easy to do it. It found it for a second, but then it loses it. And just because it found it on the screen doesn't mean that it's in focus. Remember that. A lot of these are missing, like 50-50 on whether it hit or it didn't hit. But when I went into single focus, I found the eye really well. Kitty, can you get back into the frame, please? So he finally looks. See that? If IAF was working perfectly, it would have found his eye and I could have shot it, but I missed it. But now I had to move in, got the 2 shots, nice and sharp. And that's what I'm talking about here. When I say missed shots, I would have gotten a shot if he looked quickly and the IAF worked perfectly versus me trying to move the focusing point, but I was unable to in that situation. I'm moving to find the eye. because that's the only way. And you can see the hunting, by the way. This is this is what happens when it can't find anything. It's almost like contrast focus. It's trying to find something and it's moving back and forth. And that's what it does with these 1.8 lenses. You can see that it hunts. The 24-70 2.8 doesn't ever feel like it hunts. It's just so fast. That's why I want to see pro glass. That photo was super sharp, super nice, but I was relying on myself to do the autofocus in that situation. Single point, back to auto, and I don't believe it ever finds him at this juncture. No, same thing. It just can't do it. It's having trouble. It found the nose and it just can't do it. Let's see what we've got next. Kitty cleaning, IAF. Hey, there we go. It found it. I think we had a winner right there. Finally. And then the last clip of Kitty is laying down. It's beautiful. Now, I had a problem with IAF here. Watch what it does. Let's go back, because I took a picture. Look where it's focused. It found the highlight of his white fur, but it never found the eye. So it never finds the eye for whatever reason. It's always below it is what it's attracted to. So I know they updated this. This is a new feature that they just need to tweak and make a lot better. Because then I go ahead and switch into, I switch back into single box for the focus, because none of these are in focus. These all have, even though that looks like it's on the eye, it keeps hitting the nose. It just keeps hitting the nose. There's nothing I could do about it. I couldn't tell it to move higher, and if I move the camera higher, it still stays locked on that contrasty spot on his face. So with Kitty IAF, it was hit and miss. Wasn't perfect. I don't know what else to tell you. The images are there to take a look. But Steven has a dog named Chip, and he used the Nikon Z7 outside in really bright daylight to try and photograph Chip. Chip's difficult to photograph with black hair, black eyes, lots of fur. He's cute though. And you can see it kind of tracks him, but it never hits. Steven is using the 105-1.4, which is adapted with the F-to-Z adapter, which does really well with portraits, by the way. I do better with that lens adapted onto a Z system than I ever did with it on my D5. That's how good it is when you put it onto the Z system. Let's go back frame by frame here once it starts to acquire him. So here we go, there we go. And you can just watch what it's doing. It's on the nose, it's all over the place. It's on his tail. It's just not working. And I get it. Chip is a tough dog to photograph. Look at him, you know, it's hard to see his eyes in the first place. But Kitty should have been easy to photograph because his eyes are super big and super bright and his hair is a different color. So it didn't do that good of a job here. Then he tried it again. Oh, I'm gonna get a ball. Oh, look at me. And no, just no good. No good. Again, no good. From the side, it had better, not that, but from the side right here, right there, it had better luck. And by it, I mean Steven. He actually got a picture that was focused on the eye for this one, but everything else so far has been out of focus as it comes to Chip running. Chip just sitting, eating a stick probably, that's nice. It couldn't find him here, it just kept going to his nose. Even though it looks like it's on his eyes, it's not. There's only a couple of pictures that look like they may be in focus, but they're not. And I get it, it's a difficult scenario, but there you saw his eye, it didn't pick it up. And the final thing that we wanted to do, we know that Sony has Animal AF. Steven tested out with the A7R4, so here it is. You can see that the box finds his eye, right there. It finds it, whereas the Nikon really didn't do a good job finding his eye. He took a couple of pictures. How many were in focus? Not many, but more than the Nikon. Right there, it found it. Good scenario right there. Found it on the next shot as well. It's pretty close. It's much closer than what the Nikon did. So honestly, we wanted to show you the Sony as well as the Nikon. I didn't shoot Kitty with the Sony, but the Animal AF or the Animal IAF for the Nikon is pretty much hit and miss. It's a new feature, it's a welcome feature when it works, but it didn't work perfectly. On occasion you got something in focus, but most of the time in my tests, it really didn't do that well. Would you like to show the world that you shoot RAW and pick up one of these shirts? Well, if so, head on over to store.FroKnowsPhoto.com where you can find more than 10 different designs of I Shoot RAW shirts, as well as I Shoot RAW camera bags, hats, and other different types of swag like wristbands. So head on over to store.FroKnowsPhoto.com right now to pick up your I Shoot RAW gear. So I understand that this was a super long video, but I wanted to go through as many situations and scenarios, running through as many of the different settings and changes that the cameras may have had to see how the Z6 does today versus when I did the real world review back in Florida when the camera was announced. And by the way, I was super happy with the results that I got from that review. And I know a lot of people have been saying that I've been very tough on Nikon. A lot of it is warranted. But in this situation, when I tested it shooting the kids in basketball and photographing the kitty in animal IAF, I'm very happy with what I got with the kids. I love the colors, I love the tones, the focusing system worked very well. It allowed me to get photos that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to get if I didn't have the updates that the camera has. I gotta give props to Nikon for updating the firmware a couple of times in under 2 years. That's a good sign. That means they're continuing to make the system better. But what I will tell you is that I cannot switch back to the Nikon at this point from Sony because there is no pro body. I need the 2 card slots. I need a vertical grip so that I don't have to hold it awkwardly like this. I need a better focusing system. Even though it's gotten much better and it is pretty reliable, I also need glass. When Nikon can hit us with the pro glass, this system will be much more well-rounded. But people that own Z6s and Z7 won't be able to take advantage of all of those changes in the future. They'll get firmware upgrades and the cameras are viable. I'm very happy with the results that I got and the changes that Nikon made. They are on the right path. Will they survive long enough to get to the better path? They need the better glass. They need that to come out soon, and they need pro bodies. That's it. That's a long video. I understand that. I appreciate it if you got this far. Leave a comment and say, I got this far. I enjoyed this video. Don't forget you can download sample RAW files. They're all uploaded on Flickr, so that there's a link down below so that you can check them out and line them up with the video to determine, did it hit, did it not? And that's where I'm gonna leave it. Thank you very much for watching. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.